The premise of this was to, it's been a pet subject of ours for quite some time, and I'm reasonably fascinated about it as we change the nature of what commerce is. So we've known for a while that people's shopping habits are changing, and there are some businesses that are embracing what's happening to the high street, and others that are just completely mystified. We're seeing, is it Debenhams just going into liquidation at the moment with Fraser's?
JD
Looking
Sports.
at maybe buying. No, they pulled out. They pulled out of it, and I can understand why. But it's House of Fraser, or Fraser's anyway, looking at buying it. And I was listening to the woman who was one of the directors within House of Fraser, and she nailed it in my view about what the high street is. I don't think the high street's going to die, but I think it is going to change. It is almost like those lovely buzz phrases that we have in our industry, like endless aisle, experiential. And your reason to go to the high street isn't necessarily about taking stuff home with you. It is about experience, meeting people, having a coffee, going to the pub, trying things on, matching things up. It's almost an entertainment in itself, and we're going through that transitional period. And when lockdown came, for Push On as a business, a few of you will know, we were actually in the process of moving premises. And we took the last, wine. Oh, there we go. Someone else is joining in. We took the last couple of bits and pieces out of our office on the day before the first big lockdown. And the people who were doing our place we're moving to hadn't sorted it out. So we just decided we were going to go fully remote. And we did global first. And that time we became more efficient. More people joining all the time. And it worked really well for us. We've grown through lockdown. We've actually employed quite a few people who we have never met in the flesh. It's just been such, if you're looking for, where there's muck, there's brass kind of approach, there's been plenty of opportunity. If you're in e-commerce, you should be making money right now. So I thought I'd have a bit of a walk through some of the stuff that we're doing. So I don't know how to make this thing move on one now. So how do I? There we go. So what we did is I nagged a few people. So I nagged those lovely, that's a really professional shot of you, Jason. I've got to say, you look all the grown up on that one. So we've got Jason, who's very kindly shared some time with us and will never do a thing for us ever again if I take the piss too much. Who's a senior solution specialist at, I always want to say Magento. I like the Magento people a lot, really good people. Great channel manager, and Katie and so forth has helped do this for us. We also have Colin. Are you unmuted there? Say hi, Colin.
Hi, Colin.
So Colin is one of those enigmas who is extremely American at times and then extremely British. I don't know. He's some kind of scientific hybrid that mad scientists come up with, but he drinks, and that's fine by me. And Marsha as well, the lovely Marsha, who's from Adian, who I miss very terribly. And we need to go out and talk about our various dogs and drinking as well. And I would have Chris McCarthy-Stott, who's our head of development over at Push On, but he has, our lives are changing. The way we do not have necessarily this strict 9 to 5. We blend our work environment. Not only has it changed where we work, it's changed how we work. So I tend to start earlier, take breaks, walk the dogs, do things, work a bit later, get the tea on. We almost seem to be coming around to being a task-based workforce, but change all around. So we're a little bit behind where I was going to say anyway. So what I'm going to do is quickly run round. I've done very quick introductions there. I'll start with Colin. Just give us a quick bit of background about you.
Hey guys, my name is Colin Stansbury. I'm an alliance manager here at Avalara Europe. And as Simon has so correctly pointed out, I'm foreign. Brexit does mean Brexit. But I am half and half. So I was born in the US, but I've been in the UK for 21 years now. I'm going to be talking to everybody here about the impact of Brexit regarding the movement of goods from the UK into the EU and the EU vice versa, especially in light of the Guardian update that I just received today. That's Boris Johnson had said there may be a strong possibility of a no-deal Brexit. So if I start to bang my head aggressively into the desk at any point in time, it's because I'm getting more news updates. So I'm looking forward to speaking to everyone later on today.
And let's have a little bit. So shall we have Jason? Say hi, Jason. Give us a bit of a background about yourself.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all. And yeah, I'm Jason Ford. I work at Adobe, or some like to say Magento. And before joining there, I was actually agency side. So I worked for about 10 years agency side, building, running, managing, developing Magento sites. So I've been around the software for a very long time, probably longer than I'd like to admit. But yeah, I'm going to take you through just some practical and effective tips for going D2C in 21. Obviously, I'm really keen as much as everyone is to hear what everyone else is talking about. Can't wait to hear some of the stuff that's coming out about how this year's affected everybody, because I'm sure it's going to have had a great impact in changing or accelerating the way that we're doing e-com business in the future.
Our involvement has ranged from initial proof of concepts to taking a brand direct to their consumer across multiple regions. So when Simon said he wanted to discuss D2C, my immediate thought was that maybe it'd be interesting to some people to share common obstacles that we've seen when transitioning to a D2C model. I've roughly categorized these common obstacles into 4 areas. The first of which is operational issues. The first question you got to ask yourself and the wider organization is, can you fulfill the orders? It sounds stupid, but is your warehouse set up for dispatching single items or a range of items across multiple categories? As it's fairly common for B2B warehousing to be kitted out just for dispatching packs or pallets. If self-dispatch isn't an option, are you able to utilize a third-party logistics provider? Again, might sound like a stupid question, but there are legal and tax implications. For instance, if your logistics provider decides to house your stock offshore. Also, we found that some departments within a company are resistant to stock being held by a third party, especially if it moves outside their jurisdiction. So, okay, you can ship your stock, but what about returns? Whilst sale return is pretty common in B2B, it's also pretty common that stock goes out that warehouse door and it never returns to you. So that's not so much the case with D2C. Before you go upsetting your brand advocates, you need to consider how you're going to deal with these returns that you're inevitably going to get. And how are you going to QA those returns to make sure that everything that comes back from your users doesn't just end up going in the bin, like a lot of stuff at Amazon obviously does at the moment. Perhaps a slightly less obvious operational issue that we've come across is that sometimes B2B organizations don't have the required stock to fulfill D2C orders year round. This is often a result of organizations trying to drive up efficiency by direct dispatch from manufacturer to retailer, or for example, in traditional fashion retailing, there may be 2 to 4 seasons a year with corresponding stock drops. That then means in between those drops, stock dwindles to a point where you can't fulfill a basic level of ordering. When you're going direct to your consumer, maintaining expected levels of availability for a product over its life cycle is pretty important, as the consumer is going to be questioning, if I can't get it from the brand, where else should I be getting it from? So you may end up losing orders and losing your retailers' orders if you're not able to showcase that a product is still in stock. We're at a Magento meetup. I run a Magento development team, so it'd be pretty unusual if we didn't talk about the obstacles, well, technological obstacles going D2C. And to be fair, there can be a lot of them. So I'm not going to be able to cover all of those obstacles. But the first obvious obstacle is, what e-commerce platform are you going to choose? So let's assume that you made a sensible decision. Anyone who mentions
Am I frozen or is Simon frozen?
I
Simon's
hear
frozen.
nothing.
Yeah.
I think you have to turn the CD over.
a lot of obstacles remaining. And they tend to run in parallel to the logistical issues that I walked through previously. For example, how are you going to get those orders from your shiny new website to your ERP, WMS, or third-party logistics provider? This is where I'd be heading down to the IT department asking a series of questions, starting with, do we have an API for receiving orders? No? Okay. Do we have any customers that currently order via an EDI, and could we utilize that to take orders from the website? Still no? Okay. Well, how about if site sends you a CSV or a text file however often you need to? Will we be able to automatically import those into the ERP? Hopefully the answer is yes to that one. Sometimes though, there's going to be scenarios where the answer to all of those is no, and we've come across that. And that's when it's time to rephrase those questions with, instead of do we have, into how much will it cost us to do this? And the answer may be surprising. It might cost a lot. It might actually not cost very much, depending on the actual ERP or WMS that you currently sat on. As before, the next issue you're going to get is returns. Creating orders should be pretty fully automated at the business end. Your customer places an order, it automatically gets sent to your warehouse for picking, and hopefully it gets dispatched. However, when it comes to returns, this often isn't the case, as you need to collect further information from your customer, potentially organize collections from them, QA the incoming goods to make sure they're still in a good condition so you can retail them again, and issue refunds or replacements for those orders. All of this can be hellishly time consuming, and it's often what puts a lot of B2B companies off of going D2C. So from the outset, I'd be considering how we're going to scale this particular issue and maintain profitability. Most decent e-commerce platforms these days come with some form of returns management authorization. I know Magento does. That sort of platform should allow as much of this process to be automated as possible. There still is a lot of manual work there, but we should be able to automate some of it and reduce the overhead or the cost of managing returns. If the platform you've chosen doesn't have a built-in RMA, there are other solutions that you can use. So a ticketing system that would allow your customers to raise a ticket to say they want to return something, or potentially might be a process already built into your ERP that would cover your immediate needs. So it's worth asking around the organization on how returns are currently managed. In addition to returns, customer queries tend to come in thick and fast in D2C, as not only are you a retailer where customers are going to ask you questions about delivery and returns, but you're also the brand owner or the manufacturer. So customers are going to come to you as well to ask questions specific to the product, and they expect you to be the expert about your product. So again, from the outset, I'd be considering baking into your platform a ticketing system, a hub for FAQs, both generic ones, product specific ones. If you don't know what I mean by that, I would always use the Screwfix product page as a great example of a product FAQ section, along with the Amazon product pages where there's hundreds of questions for most products. That's going to reduce the number of calls that are coming into, because your customers are asking questions on there. Potentially your customers are able to answer other customers' questions as well. Also, if possible, I'll be looking at live chat to head off those questions to keep those call rates down, because one live chat agent can deal with multiple queries at once, whereas one person on the phone can only talk to one person at once. So it is another solution to help keep customer communication more manageable. One more common technological obstacle that may seem pretty unusual to some people is how your customer's going to pay you. Why have I put this in the technological bracket? Well, we've had multiple occasions where companies' finance teams have demanded that a payment gateway is utilized, potentially as they think it's going to be easier, as they've already got a contract with that provider, but it literally has no support on major e-commerce platforms, causing quite a headache for the D2C project. In those scenarios, the real questions to be asked internally are, can we move to a hopefully better provider, such as Adyen, Stripe, maybe even PayPal? Or can we afford to build a bespoke integration with our existing provider? And by build, I also mean maintain it, because we're dealing with card details here or payment details, and it's integral that we do maintain that from a security point of view. You don't lose customer data. My advice there is, honestly, don't do the latter. Go with a pre-existing payment gateway that works with your e-commerce platform. You're going to save yourself a lot of headaches, and it's probably going to be cheaper. As with any major business change, there's going to come some real resistance and fear going D2C. It's no exception, if I'm honest. Going D2C. So to allay those fears and manage that resistance, I'd be asking internally, who do we need to convince the most? Whose job is perceived to be at risk, or whose job is going to be made potentially more difficult by going D2C? Is that the customer service team who know that they're going to get a larger amount of inbound calls, or is that the sales director who's worried that their targets are going to be harder to achieve if their retailers are having part of their market eaten into by your D2C site? So get in early and discuss their fears, see if you can come up with a workable solution for them. It's not always going to be possible, if I'm honest, because the most common argument faced is that you're going to piss off your existing retailers. And quite frankly, there's no way of hiding from the fact that you are going to do that to some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. So the question is, how can your new D2C sites support an existing sales pipeline? At its simplest, this may be including a store locator that promotes your current retail network. Moving up to more complicated scenarios, you may wish to think about building a solution that would allow your pre-existing retail network to share and fulfill potentially your online sales. Those solutions can often increase the online sales because it allows you to have a greater depth of stock by basically utilizing your retailer's stock on your website. And there's a lot of ways about doing that. If you want to discuss that sort of solution and examples of where that is working, I know a couple on Magento where that works, and then feel free to drop me a line and I'll go through any queries that you've got on that. Finally, one of the biggest political obstacles to D2C is who's going to pay for the investment. Websites don't build themselves. Developers need paying, and that's who's going to pay internally isn't a question I can't really answer. It's specific to each organization, but I would start considering at the start of your journey and questioning throughout it, who in the organization is going to benefit from this, and can they contribute? So if you have someone in the organization demanding that, for instance, there is a way of supporting the existing retail network, do they have it in their budget to contribute to that assistance rather than just making demands on the project, and then take it from there. So you've got sign off on your new D2C site, you've cracked the logistics, the FD signing the checks for you, the sales director hasn't killed you for upsetting his major retailers, his or hers, I shouldn't really said his. So job done. Not so much if you're the team that have to deliver the platform. And this is where the hard work really is about to begin for you guys. One of the first and most persistent issues you're going to come across in software development is that your data isn't clean. You're going to hear that time and time again, but don't worry, your data is never going to be clean, and you're just going to have to live with that issue. What I mean by that your data is not clean is a few examples would be your product data may currently be stored in a Word document, or perhaps it's stored on paper and faxed around the organization. We've seen that. Or maybe it's just inside someone's head. That's a fairly common scenario. But when building your new D2C website, none of those examples of data storage are going to be good enough. So you're going to have to come up with a way to get that data from where it is now into your shiny new website, and be it sitting the person down whose information is in their head and making them write it out, or copying and pasting and reformatting information from a Word document or transcribing it from paper. That task has to be done. It's a large task, and it's often time consuming. So I really would start thinking about that. Like product data, you may find yourself lacking in the assets that you thought you once had or you thought you had. Do you have product images? Do you have category images? And if you do, are they really good enough to showcase the products in a way that you want to showcase them? Would you, looking at your product images that you have, would you purchase your products from those? Is the question I would be asking myself. And then if you do have product descriptions and they've already been written out and that data is clean, has someone in marketing actually already given that out to the retail network, and maybe that's why it had been transcribed? Now, if they've done that and those product descriptions are being utilized all over the web by your retailers already, it's potentially made them useless, and you may have to consider rewriting them, because what you don't want is your new D2C website being penalized by the likes of Google for duplicate content, because that data is already being used throughout the retail network. So in all honesty, product data is one of the banes of my life on projects. When starting your D2C journey, I would really think about immediately starting to think about how are we going to populate this site, and probably for a rough ballpark to start thinking it's going to take us about half a day to write and edit a good product description. So simply do the maths and how much time is that going to take you if you've got 1,000 products, and you've not got any assets to start off with. So you've got your site up running. The next obvious question is, how are you going to reach your customer? Now, this is a massive topic, which obviously I'm not going to go into, but it's really just to kind of start kicking, to let the can be kicked down the road to get people to start thinking about it. But do you have any pre-existing databases that you can interact with your consumers? It may not be as obvious as a nice big newsletter audience over in .digital, but these sort of databases are often amassed by manufacturers and brands, for example, through getting consumers to register for warranties. Or internally, do you have digital marketing expertise that allow you to achieve the targets that the organization are going to set you? Or have you contracted that out externally? If you've not got either of these in place, it's again something I'd be considering earlier in the project rather than later, and definitely well before launch, because if you launch your new D2C website and it's a flop because no one finds it, no one comes to it, you've just invested a lot of money and potentially political capital internally into something that is not going to get those returns, and the wider organization is going to start questioning, why on earth have we even attempted this, because we've just wasted a load of money. I appreciate that was a rather brisk introduction to what's faced by many of our clients when they go D2C, but hopefully it was useful. Thanks for listening. Any questions, do feel free to fire them over to me.
Hey guys, my name is Colin Stansbury. I'm an alliance manager here at Avalara Europe. And as Simon has so correctly pointed out, I'm foreign. Brexit does mean Brexit. But I am half and half. So I was born in the US, but I've been in the UK for 21 years now. I'm going to be talking to everybody here about the impact of Brexit regarding the movement of goods from the UK into the EU and the EU vice versa, especially in light of the Guardian update that I just received today. That's Boris Johnson had said there may be a strong possibility of a no-deal Brexit. So if I start to bang my head aggressively into the desk at any point in time, it's because I'm getting more news updates. So I'm looking forward to speaking to everyone later on today. Okay, death and taxes. Oscar Wilde once said that there are only two things in life that are certain, and those are death and taxes. And I can't help you with the former, but I certainly can help you with the latter. So what we're going to talk about today is VAT and customs as a customer experience issue. Now, guys, I will be speaking clearly, but I will be speaking quickly. So if there are any questions at all related to this, with the 21 days of Brexit left to go, Simon and everyone's got my email address, and I'll be more than happy to go into in-depth discussions about your specific requirements. So let's get stuck in straight away. What does it mean to sell a D2C from a tax perspective? Well, selling D2C, what it does to do is it results in lower shipment values versus sending bulk out via B2B. So it means that de minimis thresholds are not exceeded for D2C. Now, this is not applicable for Brexit and the upcoming leaving of the EU. But what it does is when we talk about the United States, it means that, for example, if you sell a $200 pair of shoes D2C to a buyer in the US, well, then you don't have to pay import tax or customs duty on that because the limit's $1,000 in the United States. However, if you sell 5 pairs of the shoes to a B2B distributor, and for example, in New York, then you'll have duties associated to that. So when we're talking about this, when we're selling international, what we're doing here is you're actually going to be selling, more volume, yes, but less value on average, which means that in some places with de minimis, which is the value of the threshold, you will be under it. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes, nod. Yes, fantastic. Now let's get stuck into the meat and the potatoes. Okay, 21 days left to go here, guys. Just like I said, we've just got the note from Bojo that we have a strong possibility of a no deal. That is terrible news. Is actually genuinely awful news, and yeah, not great. So, but here are the changes that are going to be happening regardless of a deal, right? So as you see right here where I'm sitting, so when we leave the UK VAT regime, it means that we've got all goods are subject to import VAT, no matter the value. Extra VAT registrations for e-commerce and B2B. UK businesses may require fiscal rep. Again, we really want a deal, so this is avoided. We leave the digital services MOS, which is the mini one-stop shop, and also the VAT recovery changes as well. And all what it means for customs union is there's 250 million new customs declarations and checks that are going to need to be provided, right? With likely payment tariff calculations and payments required. So what do you guys got to do, right? What does it mean as a business? It means that there'll be new registrations for if you want to sell DDP. And there are new registrations for distance sellers, new digital registrations as well as physical representation. And down here with customs moving the goods cross-border, we need to consider commodity code, HS codes, and also calculating tariffs. Now, this is all going rather down to the wire here, and it's very scary. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to explain right now what it means with a no deal and what it's going to mean for you guys moving goods cross borders. And to do that, I'm going to do some pretty. I'm going to try to explain the complicated Incoterms in pretty straightforward English. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So here's how it works now. So if I'm selling D2C to France and Germany before the UK leaves the EU, this is how it is. It is a straightforward process. There you go. The French and the German customer purchase goods from the UK company. French or German VAT is charged if the business has crossed the distance selling thresholds of 100K in Germany and 35,000 in France, or UK VAT is charged if they have not gone above those thresholds. There's no customs duties, no import taxes. There's no problem moving the goods cross borders. VAT returns are filed in the countries where they have a requirement, where they've crossed the threshold. Customers get the goods in a timely manner without hidden charges. Everybody's happy. It's a good customer experience. We're all familiar with this. I know we are. However, this is the reality in which we're now going to be facing, okay? So here's what happens when we sell it afterwards. Now, UK businesses, we've lost access to VAT and customs implications, right? So here's what we got to think about. How are we going to pay our customs tariffs? How are we going to understand our harmonized system codes and commodity codes? How are we going to complete the customs declarations? 250 million customs declarations at a minimum. And how are we going to handle our increased VAT liabilities? So now we have to know that all sales to the EU will have to have customs declarations for goods to be allowed into Europe. If you're moving for goods from the UK into Europe, you have to have a customs declarations upon it, no matter what the value is. All companies now will have to understand their HS codes in order to calculate the customs duty and import tax of their goods for EU customs to be allowed to pass through customs to the end user. Or you could alternatively totally leave it and allow the customer to pay additional hidden fees at the point of delivery. Has anyone ever had a knock on the door when they've gone and said, "Oh, hello, Mr. DHL man, nice to meet you. Oh, what's that? You have a pin machine instead of my package? I owe an extra 20 quid in customs duties for it." Not a good customer experience, right? So here's the additional VAT obligations that go on to it. Depending on your Incoterms, which we'll speak about in the next couple of slides, UK businesses will now have to register and charge VAT in France and Germany, even if you haven't crossed the thresholds. That means if you do one sale from D2C into another country, then you will have to register for and manage the VAT in that country if you sell delivery duties paid, right? Otherwise, if you want to go DAP, the other Incoterm, the customer will have to manage the VAT. It's not a good experience. And there's fiscal representation requirements, right? Luckily, Germany and France do not require fiscal representation, but 18 other countries do. Hence why we were really keen on having the free trade agreement in place where hopefully individual countries could be relied upon to make their own decision about it. So here's what we got, guys. Here's the result and the consequence of that last 5 minutes. Big delays at customs if not properly addressed. Customers having to pay more customs than they need to. Risk of VAT fines and penalties, and a really poor customer experience. Okay, so here's the reality. Let's talk about Incoterms, right? Incoterms are the way that you sell as a business to D2C, right? So the three big ones are the importer of record, the DDP, and DAP, right? So let's talk about the importer of record right here. The importer of record, as you read right here, is the entity or individual who is responsible for all entry documents required by the customs, border protection, and for the product classification and the payment of duties, as well as any import obligations. Those are three things, guys. Please remember these. Customs declarations need to be done to move goods into a country. Tariffs, is there any non-refundable tax associated with the movement of that goods? And three, import VAT, which is refundable tax obligations that you need to be able to manage before the goods enter the country. Wine break. Righty-ho. Here we go. So DAP, what does it mean? Right? It means that the seller passes all customs duty, import VAT, and local obligations to the buyer, right? Which means you just say, forget it. I'm going to do the sale, and I'll leave the rest up to you, the consumer. The advantage is it's really easy for you as a seller. You don't take responsibility for any taxes in the transaction, and it's a minimal cost. It's really cheap. You just sell. Boom. There you go, off to the consumer, because they're the ones who are going to be handling the taxes, right? However, the customer usually isn't made aware of any additional costs associated with the transaction. Remember I was pissed off. I paid it, but I never bought from them again. Additional customs duty and VAT is due at delivery. The goods can be held up at customs if it's substantial value. And overall, it's a bad customer experience because nobody wants to go off, and if they've paid 120 quid for say, a pashmina or say like a tea set from Stoke, they don't want to have to go into the post office and pay additional fees onto it. No, of course they don't. But that's where delivery duties paid come in. That's where the seller, you as a business, are responsible for the calculation, the filing of customs duties, low import VAT and local VAT. Advantages are customer has full transparency. There's no hidden costs. The goods move through customs quickly and efficiently, and you can claim back import VAT. It's a positive customer experience. Disadvantages is there's increased compliance costs, which means you're going to have to register everywhere where you have a sale. So if you have one sale in Lithuania, you're going to have to register for Lithuanian VAT, right? Or you got a geo block, which again, and I'm sure my colleagues at PushOn and Magento will be able to speak about in detail. Now, if you're the importer of record, it means that the seller must complete accurate customs duty and import tax calculations. And there could be the difference, right, between keeping and losing a customer. Now, does that make sense all so far? I'm halfway through. Yeah? Nods? Yep, fantastic. Okay, EORIs. Anyone who is selling into Europe, you need another European EORI number, okay? You just do. If you've got a UK one, great, but we leave the EU in 21 days. It means that it's not going to matter. An EORI number, or an EORI, as some people pronounce it, is effectively a passport. It means that you're allowed to import goods into the European Union, right? Got it. So a customs duty, these customs declarations, these are the biggest issues that are facing British businesses at the moment. Now, the 250 million of these that need to be prepared and managed. Now, logistics, freight forwarders, parcel delivery companies, they will usually be responsible for the management of this particular form, right? But it's about the numbers that fill in the form that are the most important thing. Now, when you hire a freight forwarder or parcel, any one of those companies to fill out these forms for you, it means that they also take on the responsibility, the joint liability of moving the goods from A to B, which means that if you don't have customs declaration, if you don't have HS code classifications, if you don't calculate the correct value of the cost of moving the goods cross-border, it means that these guys are going to be responsible for doing it. And what they'll always do is they will always, as they are risk averse, charge the maximum amount of any kind of tax upon that certain transaction, right? It's not good. So what do you guys need to do? HS codes. Let's talk about these. Now, these are a system to globally classify traded items, right? So the first 6 digits of any particular item are universal. So 0, 8, 0, 5, 10, that's an orange anywhere in the world, from Timbuktu to Peru, right? But it's the last 4 digits, 4 to 6 there, that really make up the difference. That's the specific country code of where you have. So if you're selling clothing, for example, there's a very big difference about the material in which it's made out of, and also exactly, you know, who it's designed for, right? So there's a difference. It could be anywhere between 5 to 30% when moving goods in. Now, remember, your freight forwarders are always going to be putting the highest value on it. So it's really important that you have an understanding of, be specific about what the calculation is. So that means that you and the customer, who, if you're selling DDP from D2C, will be the one taking on that particular tax, right? So here's an example of it, right? We got a leather shoe heel, and it was 640359. That's women's shoes, women's heels. That's universal, right? But in Australia, it's 10% import VAT, right? In the US, it's 16%. But in Japan, they don't like imported leather, so they slap 30% on top of that, right? As you can see right here, you have to be so specific about each particular HS code to be able to identify who's going to be able to have about who is going to be able to have the least amount of tax on that transaction. Because again, if you're selling DDP, it all goes to the consumer. So we're talking about transparency, right? After Brexit, now more than ever, it's important that any single one of your consumers has a full understanding of the transparency, right? Well, here's a couple of options, right? You've got classification right here, being able to know the exact amount. And then you've got the cross-border, which you'll calculate the customs duty and tax to provide a better customer experience and avoid issues with customs. There we go. So what do you want to do? You want to be able to assign HS codes to products, right? Oh, heavens to Betsy. That was a Come on, Pickle. You can do this. There you go. So what you want to be able to do is you want to take your site right here. So say we're on a Magento 2 site. You've got your SKU number, item description, categories, URL, page, and country sold into. What it's able to do is able to go into this magical machine that looks like something from Bed Knobs and Broomsticks or something from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And what you do is you produce the HS code classification, right? That is the most accurate calculation, which will be able to provide the customer full transparency over the total cost of that transaction, right? So what do you have? Boom, you got an HS code, which means that you now know exactly, forgive me, this silly animations, what means that you're able to calculate the customs duty and import fees yourself, and it means that we're able to handle the calculation. So what it does here, guys, is again, go from your Magento 2 store, HS codes, use case, and then boom, you have the classifications. What it means for you guys is you have happy customers. All right, and this is imperative because Brexit means Brexit, apparently, as they keep telling me over and over and over again. Can't kick me out though. But what it means here, guys, is that when it comes to you moving goods cross borders, you have to be able to fill out all the paperwork to the nth degree, or else they're just going to stop you, right? So what do you want? You want greater accuracy, efficiency, same in time. I mean, that's just nonsense, but it's true in this case, isn't it? And then when it comes to cross-border, you want to reduce shipment rejections, right? You want to reduce custom delays. You want to improve customer satisfaction, and you want to calculate custom charges in real time because the customer is first. They are the ones that matter. And if they have a poor experience and you're looking to go to market or go into a new country, you want to reduce the cost of customer acquisition. And having returns, having rejections, having customers who are pissed off and go on social media and tell you all about it, well, then you're going to have a big problem if you're not able to provide full transparency, right? So here's what it is real briefly. I promise this is one of my second to last slide for you guys. So what you got here is you got your online store, goes in, they make a purchase, you go through the Magento platform transaction, you go through the API here, go through our Avatax platform, and then what you get here is you got your item classification, which tells you exactly how much it is. And what you get here, guys, is you get supported both DDP and DAP. So even if you're not going to take responsibility for the management of all of that transaction, it means you'll still at least be able to provide a full, transparent total cost to the customer. So here's what it looks like right here, right? Boom, address in there. You've got your items, and here you go: customs duty, Bosch, local tax, and then the shipping, total cost of your item. And they make a decision about whether or not to purchase that item.
I'm Marsha Pristallo. I work in the partnerships team at Adyen, and we've taken quite a few merchants kind of from manufacturer stage to direct to consumer, and they've had a lot of success, and we attribute a lot of that success to their use of a payment strategy as more of a tool for growth rather than just a commodity. So how to have D2C success through payments from me today. The changing merchant and going direct to consumer, and obviously we've seen that the growth of e-commerce, especially kind of during COVID times, just soar. And our friends at Adobe have given us a statistic that 70% there's been a 77% increase on e-commerce year on year. So as you can imagine, there's a huge opportunity there. And when you are moving from to D2C, what you're doing is that you're able to take better control of your offering. You're able to create your customer journey better. You're able to keep control, because when you're not D2C and you're selling into retailers or you're selling B2B, the message can become quite diluted. And as we all know, customer engagement is the new customer service. And how do you attract your customers and then retain them and engage them? A lot of people are shopping with brands that they identify with, that they have some kind of relationship with. And with so much competition in the market, it's really important that you are keeping your customers engaged. And that leads us to data being the new currency. So collecting data around your customer, understanding what they need from you, feeds into that engagement piece and allows you to retain your customers and sell more product, which is fundamentally what we all want. So as I mentioned, we have quite a lot of experience taking customers D2C from a big retailer such as Nike, for example, that was previously selling into retailers and then decided to take ownership of their customer journeys and not just get part of the story as they were getting when they were previously just selling into retailers. We also did the same for Brompton. So Brompton is a really nice kind of, we took them on as a mid-market merchant. They had manufacturing down to, you know, perfection. And then the customer journey would be that a customer would design their bike online, and then they would have to go to a local retailer in order to collect and pay for that bike. So Brompton didn't have visibility of who was buying from them. They didn't really understand that their customer, they were losing really valuable insights. So they came to us and said, we want to go D2C. And we need a robust payment solution in order for us to do that, because D2C payments is a bit more complicated. There's a lot more that customers are asking. Whereas, you know, selling to retailers or B2B is mainly on account or via bank transfer. Whereas when it comes to selling to the consumer, there's a whole host of other payment methods and things that you need to consider because you're selling to an individual. So I have a case study that talks about the Brompton journey that I will share with Simon, that he can send out to you all after this, because it really is a fabulous story about a manufacturer going D2C and then becoming a big global company. So finding the right partners is really important, from who's going to build your Magento store to who's going to provide your payments. And really ask yourselves what your partners should be providing for you, what your PSP, for example, should be providing for you. Is your PSP, you know, a leader in the market that is moving and changing with how the market is moving and changing? The landscape is changing so quickly. If you're working with some of the legacy providers that simply don't have the technology or the team dedicated to development, it's going to be very difficult. Are you using the right e-commerce platform, for example, for your needs? Are you working with the correct partners? And obviously, I know Pushan do a fantastic job of advising merchants on which partners are best for each thing. But it really is important that you have that robust infrastructure of tech partners that are going to facilitate your journey to D2C. I forgot to make the thing move. There you go. That was a video. They're all talking about how partnership is great. And changing the way you view payments. So payments has previously been viewed very much as a commodity, and it's been something that you kind of like tag on at the end, and you know, whether you can get it for the cheapest price, and it's just kind of a necessary evil. When in reality, actually, payments can be a really strategic tool. And the reason perhaps that it's previously been viewed as a commodity is the fact that the legacy providers haven't been able to do anything other than process payments. So when you change the way you view payments, you open up a whole nother world of all the different payment methods, for example, that are available, or the data that you can capture from payments that perhaps previously was being lost. If you think about your journey to checkout and all of the time and effort that you put into getting your customer to the point where they want to buy, and then all of a sudden their card is declined, or your payments are down, or for whatever reason, you lose that customer in that moment that you've worked so hard to get them to. So really start thinking about payments as being just another extension of that customer journey. And customers are becoming increasingly demanding in terms of how they want that journey to be completed. So I've mentioned it, local payment methods, and this is a huge thing that's ever increasing. And I would say probably in the UK, the first kind of payment method that caused a drastic shift was Klarna. And it was the first time that, you know, something different was happening at checkout. And, you know, it wasn't just a card-based payment, but it was a buy now, pay later option. And that's why we've seen so many merchants adopt it, because customers have responded very well to that payment method. And, you know, Klarna is just one of many. Adyen has over 300 payment methods already integrated into our platform. So you have your local payment methods, for example, Ideal in the Netherlands, where 80% of online transactions are done through Ideal. So if you are a merchant looking to sell into the Netherlands and you don't offer Ideal, chances are you're not going to sell very much. Also, if you're wanting to attract the Chinese consumer, whether you're selling in China or wanting to attract custom from the diaspora, you need to offer the Chinese payment methods, Alipay, WeChat Pay, and we're talking about billions of users using these payment methods. And yet, you know, somebody launches in China, they don't know the market, they don't understand that they need to implement these payment methods, and all of that time, money, and effort goes to waste. And then we're also seeing an increase in the kind of global payment methods. So your Apple Pay, your Google Pay, your Amazon Pay. It's almost, if you're not offering these payment methods at this point, then it's kind of, you know, you'll be left behind, and it's do or die. So working with a payment provider who is keeping up to date with all of these trends, who is adding all of these payment methods into their platform, that's so making them easily accessible to you and your customer, it's really important. We, for example, are able to then segmentify what's offered in which geography, and we do it based on the IP address. So say, for example, if your website is selling into the Netherlands, we will show ideal only in the Netherlands and nowhere else. So payment methods are really interesting, and there are some really quirky ones in the world as well. I always have to mention Boleto in Brazil. Brazil is a very cash heavy culture. They don't really trust banks. So what they have is a boleto, and it's basically you have to print off a slip of paper after you make an online reservation. You then print off a slip of paper that has a code on it. You then take it to your local convenience store. You then give them that little piece of paper and you give them cash. They give you another little piece of paper in return with a completion code on it. You then go back home, you get back to your computer and you type your code in, and that's the transaction completed. And I think if I had to walk that much, I don't think I'd shop very much online, but there's lots of interesting ones. And really think about how you optimize your checkout. Again, this is something that your payment provider will be able to do for you. Everybody has that kind of Amazon envy about the one-click checkout and storing your card details so that you can use them again rather than having to enter them every time. Adyen actually operates the Uber checkout. So again, the last thing you think about when you're ordering an Uber is paying. You're thinking about, when's my Uber going to arrive? And again, it's about creating that frictionless customer experience that fits in well with the rest of your customer journey. If you have a really slick journey to check out and then like this clunky thing where you have to enter your card details every time, the customer is getting a very fragmented approach, and there's a lot of friction there. And we all know how much abandoned carts cost merchants. Fighting fraud. So fraudsters are getting really, really savvy. They're getting more intelligent. The more locks you put on your door, the more likely it is that you're going to have somebody break in. So really ask your payment service provider about what they do about fraud and what fraud tools they're using. Often PSPs will use a third party to do their fraud checks. We do have our own fraud tools, so ours is a lot easier and it's industry leading. And really make sure that you're understanding how fraudsters are behaving and that you're keeping up with it. But at the same time, whilst you need to block fraudulent transactions, it's really important that you don't block legitimate ones. So when it comes to this year, obviously we have the implementation of 3DS2. We all remember 3DS1 as being such a pain in the bum about remembering your password and this, that, and the other, and really creating that friction in the customer journey. Whereas with 3DS2, for example, if we are your PSP, we use biometrics in order to complete the transaction or codes that are texted to the customer so that they never actually have to leave your site. We did get a bit of a grace period last year when, you know, we got an extension of time. There's not going to be an extension anymore. Next year is going to be the year that, you know, everybody will have to be 3DS2 compliant. So it really is important to think about. I'll leave you with this quote. I think I've probably completed in record time, but it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. And that, I think, is the key. And if we've learned anything from this year, having, you know, an overview of the way merchants have performed on our platform, it's been those that have had the ability to be agile, to pivot, to change direction, to open a new channel if they needed to start selling into a new region if they needed to. They're the ones that have been the most successful, and they're the ones that have had really good tech partners, robust infrastructures, a really strategic way of looking at things from the kind of get-go, and that's allowed them, as I said, to make moves really quickly. So if you are looking to move,
nice to meet you all. And yeah, I'm Jason Ford. I work at Adobe, or some like to say Magento. And before joining there, I was actually agency side. So I worked for about 10 years agency side, building, running, managing, developing Magento sites. So I've been around the software for a very long time, probably longer than I'd like to admit. But yeah, I'm going to take you through just some practical and effective tips for going D2C in 21. Obviously, I'm really keen, as much as everyone is, to hear what everyone else is talking about. Can't wait to hear some of the stuff that's coming out about how this year's affected everybody, because I'm sure it's going to have had a great impact in changing or accelerating the way that we're doing e-com business in the future. So yeah, I'm going to finish up. Today. I won't take very long to get through all the slides, and we'll get this all done really quickly so everyone can continue with their nights. Why D2C? I'm probably going to go over a couple of things that everyone's already touched on, because we've had some really good presentations so far. There's some stats up on screen. I think a couple of the stats on this slide people might have mentioned already, but we're finding a really big trend in people moving towards shopping direct with brands and customers and consumers. I love all of the focus on the customer experience that we've been talking about. Everyone, like the customers, want to build those relationships with brands. There's the whole influencer generation. You know, they build these. They want to be seen as part of these brands and representatives of these brands. And the only way they do that is by having these direct relationships with these manufacturers, with the owners of this product. And we can see on the screen just how much opportunity and growth there is in this industry. Now, there's some stuff in here that's a little bit off the wall, like the amount of buy online, pick up in store growth. That number was January 18 to January 19. I'm sure that has gone rocketing this year with the amount of click and collect that people are doing and you know, have been forced to do. So there's going to be some really interesting stats coming out early next year around how sort of this has been affected. But we've got a really big opportunity with D2C. I've worked with a few brands that were wholly distributors and wholesale and stuff, and they had to really fight to recover their own brand identity. One is a men's skincare range, very famous men's skincare range in the UK. Has a dog as a mascot, so I'm pretty sure everyone can guess who it is. They had to fight tooth and nail to recover their brand identity, because
I think I have it in my beard.
Yeah, the likes of Tesco and Boots and stuff had basically made cannibalized their brand into a discount brand, because they had it on 12 out of 16 periods of the year. It was on buy one get one free, and they had to really fight to recover that. They still have that relationship, but they're growing their personal like relationship with their consumers, growing their knowledge of data of their customers and what their customers want. They've launched new products based on that research and based on that brand awareness. Now we'll go through this, why act now? These are just some stats that actually came from Bizarre Voice, so one of our partners, as to what's happening in this year. Increases in page views, generally in commerce, we're seeing a massive increase in page views as customers are going direct to e-com instead of to supplement the kind of on-site shopping. And we're also seeing a massive increase in average order value as well. And some of that, I think is as a result of obviously COVID and people not being able to buy as much in store. We all just talked earlier about how we can't buy. We did a lot of Black Friday shopping because we haven't been buying stuff during the year, and so we look at it as an opportunity to splurge. But also, I think it's the development of personalization and maturity of that personalization, and those sort of shopping experiences coming to light as well. So what is holding us back? We did some research, and these were the top 4. There was about 10 things, but I've just cherry-picked the top 4. But these are the things that businesses have said are holding them back from going direct to consumer. So most of the businesses that were interviewed and gave feedback are B2B businesses, but have consumer products. So the number 1 by quite a substantial way was lack of talent to staff transformation projects. This is a really key one. There's sometimes a gap in knowledge in that industry, in that business, and what we've been talking about today is exactly about filling that gap. Now, some of that can be filled with technology. Some of it, the technology on hand, and we'll talk a little bit about the Magento side, but can really bridge those gaps in staffing. But also using technology, using third parties, using partners and tools to streamline the workforce that you need to actually run a D2C business is really where it's at. You don't want to have to staff this to the hilt. You want to be able to make use of things like AI technology and drag and drop CMS editors and those sorts of things to really capitalize on the staff that you do have before you start expanding that team. There's no point in going out and hiring 100 people just to staff a D2C that you haven't proved yet. So, that's where some of the technology can come into play. Internal resistance to change. Again, this has been touched on a few times today. It is worth getting people on board. As much as there's going to be people that are resistant to the change, also go around and ask where people have worked previously. You'll find a lot of people have worked in D2C brands or in consumer products and things, and they'll have some input to have. I think it was mentioned in Chris' presentation right at the start. Go and ask your warehouse team, do they have the setup in place to actually be able to go and do this? Because sometimes they do have that. It might not be these massive hurdles to jump over. You just have to start asking those questions. Limited budget, that's again tied into those first couple of points as well. You don't want to have to hire a huge amount of staff to be able to support this. You want to be able to get up and running really quickly, and that's where choosing the right e-com platform is really key for that, because you can combine a lot of your B2B practices with your D2C practices if you pick the right system. A lot of platforms are specialized in one or the other, or they have multiple instances to kind of supply both. Get your B2B side on B2B sales on board and allow them to foot some of the bill for not only increasing their sales capacity because they're able to take B2B sales through an e-com digital platform, but also it reduces the risk when you can invest in a single integration from e-com to ERP, single integration into payments, single integration into tax systems. Being able to group all of those things together and not having to invest in two lots is really key. IT infrastructure, again, the technology in place, making sure that anything that you pick can be highly integrated into other platforms that are already in place. and make use of the existing technology. So if you've got something already that handles, if you've got a PIM system already, make sure that we're making use of that. If you've got an internal price listing tool, make sure we're using that. So quick wins for D2C commerce. Firstly, choose a hybrid platform. If you're already trading B2B, even if you're not, and it's something that you're looking to expand into, make sure you've got that capability. With a hybrid platform, you consolidate everything, you improve your total cost of ownership and your return on investment. You get there that much quicker. And you also, you streamline your processing. So things like stock, having to manage 2 sites with 2 lots of different stocks, and the sharing of those stocks and things between 2 completely different platforms, it's just a big headache that you don't need. Reporting on things. If you're trying to report on B2B and B2C, you might have really inconsistent features between those 2 platforms, and they might report on revenue in a completely different way. I know that's a really crazy thing to think, that revenue is anything but revenue, but it happens, and platforms report in things in different ways. Use AI. Okay, so AI has been around for a while now, and every platform under the sun has some form of AI in it, but it's how you use it and how you use it to make your lives better. So you obviously want it to be customer focused, and you want to make sure that we're personalizing shopping experience for the end user. We want to make sure that we're generating more average order value from the customers, improving our revenue, making it pay for itself. But we also don't want it to be really heavy on our staff to run that AI. We don't want to be developing something from scratch and reinventing the wheel 100 times. We want it to be a couple of clicks, insert some product recommendations or some personalized content, and then see how that performs. We want to build those relationships, learn about our customers' behaviors, and then start iterating on that. And the quicker we can do that using these tools that are drag and drop and built-in tools, the better. So integrations, we've mentioned that a few times. Obviously, we've mentioned integrations into tax platforms, integrations into payment gateways. You obviously want to make sure that whatever e-com platform that you are using can be highly integrated. That means being able to really easily add in your payment gateways, easily add in your fulfillment systems. And the kind of elephant in the room with some people is Amazon. Well, make Amazon, if you choose to, make Amazon another sales channel and be able to support that through your e-com platform. Start selling on there, because there's some crazy statistics out there, but some sales say that, some statistics say that about 60% of sales online sales start with searches on Amazon. And that's a crazy amount, but it's true. So if you're not on that marketplace and you have the capacity or you have the margins to be on there, let's get on there, but make it so that it's not a big hassle for yourselves. Magento has a built-in Amazon marketplace integration, and you can be up and running and selling small parts or your entire catalog on there. And it's really important as well to look at API coverage. It's really techie and it's really boring, and it's probably the only thing that is really difficult to show and demonstrate, but it's really important for the likes of Push-On, the likes of any of your partners to integrate into your platform. You've got to have those full full API coverage, and also looking a little bit future proof, looking at headless and PWAs and different sales channels in the future. If you want to pivot your organization a little bit and do an event with a new front end just for that event, maybe you want to look at doing a PWA, and you need headless capabilities and a strong API set to be able to roll that out really quickly. Content. We've mentioned, again, customer experience, making sure that your brand has some messaging, and customers actually really engage with brands that share messaging and ideals that customer has. They want to be perceived as sharing those ideals. So if you have some strong ideals that you can communicate as part of your brand, communicate them. Use a content editor to build content. You don't want to be building everything in HTML, CSS. That takes forever. You want to be able to just drag some content in and start publishing it as soon as you possibly can. You also want to be able to schedule things into the future. The worst thing for a marketing team is living in the moment. You have to be able to plan and execute on your plan, because then that gives you the flexibility to pivot and change directions at a moment's notice when you need to react. But you shouldn't be completely reactive. Product management and merchandising. This is the bane of any merchandiser or ecom executive's day. It takes them hours to do, and we already mentioned your data isn't clean, I think Chris said right at the start, and it's true. It takes a long time to produce and organize and merchandise all the product data. So again, what we want to do is use AI and rules to merchandise products as much as we can, and then we go in and tweak it. And using rules to put products into categories, rather than going and manually moving products, that means that new products coming into the site automatically get merchandised with your other products. They get related upsells, cross-sells. They appear in the right categories. You move a product into from let's say last season's products automatically move into a sale category and get a 20% discount applied to them. All of these things just save you huge amounts of time. It's also probably one to note, if you are moving from B2B to sort of a D2C type model, don't do your categories based on what you call them. Do them based on what your customer calls them and how your customer is going to be browsing. You've got to start thinking customer focused and customer first. Very quickly, I know I'm running over. You want to be highly flexible and integrated. We've already talked about how important payment gateways are, how important tax is, how important delivery integrations are. You want to make sure that you're in a place where if you need to add something, then it's probably already been done for you, and it's just a case of building it into that platform. Logo slide, won't spend any time on these, but these are companies that have done this with Magento, done this to a great degree with Magento, and there's hundreds and hundreds more. My final say is I'm really interested to see what is going to happen in 21. I think this has been an incredible year for moving e-commerce forward. I would say we've gone forward probably about 5 years in the space of this 1 year, and it's probably going to keep accelerating. The death of the high street, as we kind of opened with, it's not the death of the high street. It's just a change and a pivot towards more digital focused commerce, and